Welcome to Living Ardently. I'm your host, Adrian Giraldi, and we are back. This is the new studio via Zoom view. For those of you watching on YouTube. We had our last podcast here in live in the studio, aka my bedroom in my new apartment, but we are now here virtually with another guest who is amazing. He's a graphic designer and does amazing things with what he does and inspires me to want to be creative again. And so we'll get to introducing him in just a bit. So yeah, great stuff today. Let's get into it. All right, so today's guest is a freelance graphic designer, a Catholic creative who started the Creation Project, which you can follow them at the Creation Project. And recently, his computer randomly died on him, and it was a tragic moment. So you can also follow him at arc.crtv. My guest today is Ricky Cruz. Welcome, bro.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Ooh, look at that. I switched sides. You guys see that? On my screen, I switched sides, and that's not normal. So I was just but welcome in, bro.
Thanks, man. Excited to be here.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about that computer mishap.
Yeah. So like all designers or just all creatives, we have like a bunch of external hard drives, right? Like SSDs or whatever. And so I have a ton of those for work. I work as a graphic designer for this startup, and I was just exporting some stuff out of Illustrator and Photoshop, and I could hear my computer fan just like roaring. Like it was so loud. And, I stepped out of the room for a little bit, and then as soon as I came back in, my computer just shut off completely. Uh-oh. And I was like, no. Are you kidding me? Because like a lot of these files that I was exporting, they were due the day of. It was a project that I'd been working on for like 2 weeks. Man. No. And I was like, crap, like this is bad. So I turned it on, and thankfully, thank you Adobe for this, but they had recovery files of it, so I didn't have so I didn't have a lot of stuff to redo, but never export more than 10 files from Illustrator. Right. So and run Photoshop at the same time.
Oh man, so. Yeah. My I have I think 2016 MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
I got it used, and it works well. I just needed I had like a 2012 15-inch MacBook Pro, and it just like it was meeting its end. Like I was doing a lot of video editing, and I use Photoshop a lot too for graphics and stuff, and it just was like dying on me randomly at 50% battery. So I was like, okay, this has to not happen anymore. So I upgraded it, and this even sometimes gets overwhelmed with the things that I have. And as you know, they don't always carry them. If you don't get like the 500, the 256 gigabytes isn't that much for MacBooks. Oh yeah,
it's because the downloads are already like 200 gigabytes anyway. Right, it's crazy for like the updates. Yeah,
it's insane. So we're gonna start with some rapid fire question. Ricky, you ready for this?
I hope so. I hope so.
All right. We'll see how you do. Let's see. I'm gonna just throw random questions at you, and we'll see how fast you can answer them. There we go. Cool. So I can see you too. All right. Ariel or Jasmine?
Jasmine.
Place you want to travel the most?
The UK.
Favorite season?
Summer.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate chip.
Who has it easier, men or women?
Men.
What is there such What does a person need to be happy?
Good people around them.
Is double dipping ever at a party ever acceptable?
No.
Sourdough or wheat?
Sourdough.
Name one of the 7 dwarves.
Sleepy.
Favorite type of tea?
Green tea.
Do you respect Kanye West?
Yes.
Godfather or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Star Wars or Marvel?
Marvel.
Yes. That's a hard choice. How many hours do you need of sleep?
7.
Paper or plastic?
Paper.
How many kids would you like to have?
5.
Are rats cute?
No.
Do you believe in love at first sight?
Yes.
What is the ideal outside temperature?
80 degrees.
Wow, it's hot.
76. 76.
I guess your 80 and my 80 is different. 80 here is like you're like with humidity is gross.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Right. You guys don't have much humidity over there in California, do you?
No, not really.
Yeah. It sucks. Well, sucks to be in Florida rather. Giving presents or getting presents?
Giving presents.
If you had a child and you would want them to be would you want them to be the most popular person in their high school?
Not really.
Make a high pitched sound.
That was so low. That was just me thinking. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can do that right now because my sister's across the hall and she's in class and I don't want to like scream.
Fair,
but that wasn't my high pitched sound. But
that wasn't.
Can't do that right now. But yeah.
Ask for permission or beg forgiveness.
What was the first one?
Ask for permission or beg for forgiveness.
Ask for permission.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane.
Climb a mountain.
What type of milk do you put in your cereal?
Whole milk. Regular milk.
Regular milk. Would you eat a day-old taquito from 7-Eleven?
No.
Do you Instagram your food?
Sometimes.
What sound does a seal make?
What sound does a seal make? I don't even know.
I think the typical one is art.
Oh yeah, that's what I was about to say, but I was like, I don't know if that's a seal or not. Yeah,
it's like an otter. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like,
I don't know animals. Dark or milk chocolate?
Dark chocolate.
Polka dots or stripes?
Stripes.
Favorite journal, paper or computer?
Paper.
Oh, I like that. What's your favorite clothing brand?
Oof. Urban Outfitters.
Black beans or refried beans in your burritos?
Black beans.
Who's your favorite Harry Potter character?
Ron Weasley.
Last name. Last question. How do you feel about cranberries?
I feel neutral.
Okay, the real last question. Who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Oof. There's a lot of people that inspire me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Name your top 3.
Top 3?
Yeah.
Oh, dang. I think number 1, first and foremost, recently, has been Mass. Not a particular person, but obviously as Catholics, it's like our number 1 form of worship, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's been big for me, just being able to go back to Mass and seeking inspiration from that. But more from like a design sense, big fan of Saint Lennon, Andrew Lennon. Really good graphic designer and illustrator. So, and I've been following him for a bit. He actually designed one of my tattoos. That's a fun fact.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I just love how he creates and just how much he loves Christ and how he's able to convey that in his art. I think that's really awesome. Really inspired by Virgil Abloh, who's the founder of Off-White. Yeah. So secular, but
That's dope,
I just think like the ability for him to find something so simple and like a font and his colorways and all that stuff and making it really cool is something that I try to emulate.
Nice.
So I really think that he's up there for inspiration. But there's like hundreds of forms, but those are the top 3 I could think of right now.
That's awesome. That's great. Are you I'll ask that question later. So give us a little bit of your faith background now that we got, a little bit of your random questions out of the way. Give us a little bit more of a your faith background. You shared with me before we started recording, but why don't you give the listeners the same or more?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. So I grew up in Southern California all my life. And I grew up a cradled Catholic. So I went to Catholic school from preschool up until high school. And I was just talking about this before we started recording, but I lived in obviously a Filipino household. Yeah. And Filipinos are traditionally Catholic, and very much Christ was present in my life, but not in a personable way, more of like, oh, let's pray before meals, or let's pray before we eat, go to sleep, or just go to mass on Sundays. That was it. There was no like personal experience that I had with Christ. But that all changed my senior year of high school when I went on this retreat. It was called Kairos. I know a lot of people have probably gone on it.
Awesome.
But it was a 3-day retreat, and I just went because a ton of my friends were going. Didn't really expect it. It was like the senior thing. Yeah. And so I went, and I wasn't really expecting anything, but it was really like my first true encounter with Christ in the Eucharist, and just with the people around me, and being able to witness that really changed my perception of my faith and my perception of God. And I met some of my best friends on that retreat who are still my friends now, and that was like almost 5-6 years ago. And that was a huge turning point in my faith. And then I went off to college. I went to Arizona State for a year and a half. And that was a big test in faith because I was away from home, I was away from friends, and it was a totally different landscape. So I really found my faith struggling. I found myself really struggling to figure out who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And I prayed to God. I was like, what do you want me to do? Because I feel lost here. I don't know where to go. And I felt him call me back home to Orange County. And that's really when I started pursuing ministry and helping out at my local church, at my old high school on retreats. And that's really where I grew to love graphic design. And it honestly started so simple, just by making designs on Canva and on Over for my for the youth group that I helped out at. And then just grew from there. And my faith grew from there. And I'd like to say, like, my design goes hand in hand with my faith, and how my faith basically inspires my design and helps me just push forward with it.
That's awesome. So when you went back home, did you just go to community college, or
I went to community college for I think like a year or 6 months just to like finish some credits, and then I transferred to a local university here.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yeah,
I know some friends who went to John Paul the Great, I think, university. And they loved it there, and it apparently was, I didn't know it was so small.
Yeah, it's a super small school.
Yeah, like like Ave was a small school. I went to Ave Maria University, and it was like total campus was like 1,000 students. And And so like I thought that was small, but apparently that was smaller. And I almost
Yeah.
went there instead because I wanted to, like I said, I shared with you before we started recording. My goal was to become like to work graphic design and because I was doing it in middle school and then in high school I was in TV production. So then I was like, oh, why not marry the two and do animation potentially, work for Pixar. And so that was the original goal before I felt that extreme pull to do youth ministry. And so that's where I am. And so when I started looking, when I started to see your stuff, I was like, oh, this is so cool because I have such a like an eye for like a love for great graphics and designers and stuff like that. And so when I started seeing your modern like wallpapers and things like that you were doing, I was like, oh, this is so dope. I love this. It's so simple, so unique, and it's clearly like because you can tell like there's some obviously designers will be inspired by something and then like curate it to something that they faith based, and that's cool. But like from what I saw with your designs, it was like very unique, very like I had not seen it before. I was like, oh, this is great. And that's what I love about when good design is intentionally and thought out. So I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So you started just teaching yourself graphic design just because of Canva. Is that how that happened? Or did you end up going to do classes in design?
So I actually took a graphic design class my freshman year of high school.
Oh,
And
cool.
that was literally the only time that I ever took like a graphic design or design course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I learned just through obviously like with Canva or with Over, it's just like plug and play. Like you just plug in
Mm-hmm.
your pictures and then you just type in like on their templates or whatever.
Right.
But I really started to like mess around on the app and like start creating my own graphics just based on like the templates or just using what other creators have done on the app as
Yeah.
inspiration.
Right.
Um, but then I figured, like let's take this a step further and learn Photoshop again. So I
Mm-hmm.
still remembered like the basic stuff from my class in high school.
Yeah.
Um, but I knew that like obviously that's not enough to really like come out with really cool graphics. Um,
Right.
so I started teaching myself obviously like design theory and just how to work Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the first Adobe app that I ever learned was
Nice.
Photoshop. And then just recently, like over the past year, I've been using Illustrator like no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started, I was super scared of Illustrator.
Yeah.
But then I just watched YouTube videos every
Yeah.
night just to teaching myself about it and
Nice.
just kind of trying to find kind of like my design style and what I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do through it.
Okay.
So yeah, basically everything's
So
been self-taught or YouTube. So yeah.
yeah, so people, for those that don't know what this design theory is, can you explain a little bit what that means?
Yeah, so design theory is more so like typography, so
Mm-hmm.
matching and selecting the right fonts, color theory too, so like what colors go together, complementary colors, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then also obviously measuring and making sure everything's aligned,
Right.
and placing things, learning balance, the rule of thirds, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Those are all very important in design and what really makes a design pop out, no matter how simple or how complex it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was very important to kind of teach myself that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a lot. I've been listening to a lot of because I myself have been trying to delve back into it because, like you all know, I plan on getting. I mean, I'm getting married next year, and I want to be able to like on my youth minister salary. I'm not gonna be able to really afford like that lifestyle of a family, So like I know I need to create more opportunities for myself, and that might be getting out there and getting back into graphic design and freelance work. But like having to relearn some of this stuff is crazy because, like I said, I started doing graphic design in middle school, and that's not always like the like deepest thing. But the one thing I did create, which is I still like have like bragging right, I like to brag about, is because like one of the projects we had, Mr. Cruz was. It's funny. Our teacher was Mr. Cruz.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, yeah. And Mr. Cruz was like, gave us a project that was like take a logo from a company and modernize it, like update it, make them a new logo. And so take three, and then we had to choose three and update them. So I took Albertsons, which was like a grocery store, Delta, the airlines, and I forget what the other one was. I think it was like a electronic company that no longer exists. And so I took Deltas, and back in the day it was like a red and blue thing. Mm-hmm. And I had updated to like make it more simple, flat, and red. And then fast forward to like a couple months later, like they updated their logo and redesigned, and it was like nearly exactly the same as the one I created. And I was like,
crazy.
Whoa, that's so good. It felt so good to like have created something that, the company themselves, I mean, I didn't send it in, but like whoever designed it had the same kind of idea that I did. And so my professor, like, he was like, when I came into class, he's like, well, he was my teacher, I guess, whatever the difference was. Like, Adrian, come here. Like, I came in, he's like, come here. I was like, remember your design? He like showed me what design. I was like, yeah. I was like, this is great. But look at Delta's new website. And he had me like search up Delta's website. And then he showed me. I was like, and I thought at first that he had submitted my thing. And it's like, no, did you? I was like, no. It's just like they updated. And this is an affirmation to you that, you have the mind of it. To not make such a great difference, but like a small difference. And design, there's so much intricacies to it, and so it's really cool to kind of get into it. So if you're not interested, you're not gonna do it yourself, learning about design theories and learning why certain things are attractive to you and why certain things aren't is really cool.
Yeah.
Even in advertisement, it's really crazy. So Were you always into art then growing up, or were you just kind of, was art a part of your life before you started getting into graphic design?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just a little bit of background. My family was very artistically talented, like my extended family. A lot of my relatives who lived in the Philippines were mostly musicians or like illustrators. And my mom was pretty artistic, and so was my dad. But obviously like that's not their profession, but I always saw it as like, oh, it's just what they do. I never really saw like any interest in it. But I think it was like in middle school where I started tracing some anime books that I had, like Naruto, or I remember like drawing like Pokemon, and it was like super simple because I was just tracing, but then it slowly grew into like, okay, let me like stop tracing and start drawing like freehand and just like looking at it. And that was kind of just like my hobby back then, and then obviously like paused that in middle school, stopped that in middle school, and then didn't really come back into it until now. But yeah, like art really wasn't anything that I was really, really interested in. But I think it just like grew more and more throughout the years. Yeah.
It's so interesting to see because, I'm friends with some designers, and I asked them like, some of them were like they love to draw before, and then like they stopped drawing and now they're all just digital, and they don't even draw, like they don't like go on an iPad and like Procreate and draw things. They are like strictly graphics, like logo design now. And I guess sketching is part of that, but it's interesting to see how different artists kind of like come to graphic design in different ways. And I think like it feels like a saturated field, and it probably is, but that's why it's so, I feel like, do you feel that pressure to be like stand out as a designer?
Yeah, I think so, and that's something that like I've really kind of been struggling, not really struggling with, but kind of like
Mm.
contemplating about,
Yeah.
um because as like a Catholic creative, it's very different than like being a
Mm.
regular secular graphic
Mm-hmm.
designer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think like the unique thing with being a Catholic creative and being part of like a community, um,
Mm-hmm.
because there's not a lot of us, there's not a lot
Yeah.
of people,
Yeah.
and like the fact that you and I are both Catholic creatives and we're able to do this is a blessing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
because I know there are secular artists out there who are not open to discussing like their whole art or like their whole process, right? um
Right.
and so that's really where I've been wrestling of like, it's great that I can collaborate, but at the same time, how can I also protect my work and make my work my own,
Yeah.
um and really what I've been coming to the conclusion about that is that, I want my work to inspire other people too.
Mm.
um and I remember like 2 weeks ago, I got tagged on Instagram and I was like, oh, what's this? And then this guy ended up creating something and he said design inspired by ARC Creative. And that was the moment where I was like, wow, like this is really what I want my art to be. I really want it to be a form of inspiration, not a form of like pride for myself.
Mm.
I want it to be an expression of my faith and an expression of inspiration for other people.
Right.
Um, and so that's really where I'm like, I do want to be different in a way that's going to inspire people to be even more different than I am,
Mm.
like to create even better art than I do.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. That's so cool. It's like, when we're able to inspire people, I mean, like, even for me as a youth minister, like it's not like a pride thing, it's just like an affirmation that we're doing what we're supposed to do,
Mm.
and like with the teens, like when they say, they come back to me and say, like, I listened to your advice, and or what you said in your talk, blah blah blah, or what you said to us in our group meeting, our small group last week, and blah blah blah, like, and this happened, and so I'm really grateful for it, to the advice you gave, and like that, like, is huge, like, for me as like as a youth minister, to kind of hear, and if you even want to go into the podcast, like the people that respond to our post, or like send us DMs, like, I love, like, your podcast, and it's really been helpful for me, and I love, like the format, how it's not like you're always trying to teach me, but you're also making me feel like a part of the conversation, like these affirmations that we get, um is huge, to show that, oh, we are doing good work for the kingdom at the
Mm.
end of the day, and I feel like as creatives in general, like especially Catholic creatives, we are doing it, well, particularly for Catholic creatives, when we are doing our work, there's one reason we are doing it, and it's really great to see that affirmation that, yeah, God is working through us in some way, and so that's really cool.
Mm.
That was actually what I was going to ask you next, is like, what is your biggest struggle that you've had, and if that's your biggest struggle, then that completely makes sense. But has there been other struggles that you've had in designing and stuff like that in your journey of design?
Yeah, definitely. I think, um, one of the things that I really struggled with in quarantine
Mm-hmm.
was finding inspiration,
Oh
and
yeah.
um yeah, and really like getting the motivation to create.
Mm-hmm.
um and I would always tell myself, it's not all about the quantity, it's about the quality of the
Mm-hmm.
work. um but I really found myself lost and like questioning, like, oh, is this really what's for me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, like, is what I'm creating really the mission that I am trying to uphold, like in my own art? because I found myself like during quarantine creating just to create and just to put something on my feed, you know, so that people wouldn't think that I just completely bailed. And that was really the point where I was like, you know, I think that I'm experiencing burnout right now, and really, because like my main source of inspiration was like, you know, going to mass or going to like worship events, like social events in my diocese, you know, but all that was closed. You know, like there was no inspiration, and I didn't have a lot of motivation, you know, to be honest, like to open up the Bible or to like watch a live stream mass, just because I felt so trapped. And so, you know, if anything, like that struggle has been a learning point for me. Not just like in my own personal creative mindset, but also when I work too, you know, like taking a break or to take my time creating things, because I would always rush or like only create when like I'm on this creative high, right? But what I've realized like in the struggle is to balance that and to really listen to myself of like, okay, you know, there's a reason why you're not feeling motivated, why you're not feeling inspired, and that's because like you're forcing yourself to be. And what I've told, you know, people who have asked me, what's your biggest piece of advice? And I always say, you know, take some time to rest, and be gentle to yourself as a creative. You know, it's okay to take a few hours or a day to just like shut off and just do whatever you want, you know, to find that inspiration, and just to rest instead of just like thinking about the next design or the next podcast, the next video or photo that you're going to take. You know, I think like through that struggle, that's what I've learned 100%.
That's awesome. Yeah. Cause I mean, for me, like even the burnout is real, like for podcasting, trying to create weekly podcasts, not trying to, but like, you know, trying to schedule it, making sure it works outside of my full-time job that I have to work. It can get draining in like personal life, obviously. So like I've been pretty vocal recently the past few like months that, you know, I've been creating so much time. I've been trying to create podcasts, but at the same time I have work, and at the same time I'm like trying to plan a wedding. I'm trying to like move into this apartment, and it's just been so much that I had to stop making making the podcast for like a week, and then like I was inconsistent with getting it up on the regular schedule day. So like there was a lot more pressure I was putting on myself to like create or to just, you know, make it happen. But I just knew that I needed to take that week off to like reset, to kind of just let myself be tired, you know, like catch up and have myself some grace, because I know people will still listen to it. You know, it's not like they're gonna stop just because I stop. You know, yeah, it's so true for any person out there that in any creative in any way, if you're making YouTube videos or designing or, you know, what have you, resting is so important, and giving yourself grace, you know, because that pressure you put is real.
Yeah.
And so with your design then, you know, you said that it's always been rooted in your relationship with Christ and stuff. So how has your relationship in Christ improved? Like how has your design then affected your overall relationship in your faith, like with the Lord, like throughout the years?
Yeah. I guess I could start with currently what's going on in like my own faith life and how that's translated into my art. So I've been doing my saint prayer card series for the past few weeks. And then I made a few posters before that. So the whole story behind that is, you know, I was really struggling with feeling close with God. I felt very, very far from Christ. And there was a point where it's like, you know, I'm really not worthy. I'm not really, you know, into my faith as much as I was before. And I was praying at mass one time, and God just really put it on my heart to focus on the saints. For some reason, I never really had, prior to that, I really didn't have any connection or like not supreme knowledge about any saints. I only knew like my confirmation saint, and then like a few other saints, obviously. But I didn't really know like their story or what they were devoted to. And it kind of reminded me of this instance at a camp that I went to last summer. It was a Life Teen camp here in California. And I remember I was praying in the middle of adoration, and obviously, it's all these teens around us, like hundreds of teens. And I was just praying in adoration, and I remember really just having this thought come into my mind, like, this room is full of saints. Like this, like each and every single person here, each teen, each young adult, each core team member has the potential to be a saint, or is not a saint already, and reverting back to now and just praying on that thought and praying what God put on my heart, I was really like, how can I get back in my faith? How can I really get closer with God? And that was through learning about the saints. And I got a strong connection to JP2, like an awesome saint, the man. Yeah. Like he's great. And just like how he led as the Pope and how he loved the youth, and, how he just loved connecting the faith back, and giving it back to the youth of the church, I thought was so important. And then Saint Maximilian Kolbe and Saint Therese and Mother Teresa and all these saints. And I really just saw, God talking to me through like me researching about these saints, and saying like, holiness isn't far away. The only thing holding you back is yourself. And I remember like a few days ago, learning about Carlos, forgot his
Cutis.
Yeah.
He's canonized tomorrow.
Yeah, he gets canonized tomorrow, and
Saint.
I was like, crazy. And he was only 15. And he loved the internet. He was just a normal guy. And that's really where I realized God was really calling me to more and calling me deeper into holiness. And basically saying like, there's no blueprint to the path of holiness. The only thing that you need to follow is me. And that's really where, I realized, all right, God, like there's a reason why you wanted me to look into the saints, especially the modern saints. Because I really felt like that's what he was calling me, like telling me that, holiness isn't far away. You just got to keep striving. You just got to keep following.
Yeah. I just put like, especially Carlos and a few others after I looked him up. I mean, I found out about him like a year ago when they announced that he was going to be canonized potentially. And I was just like so inspired by him. By the fact that he was only like 4 years older than me, I was like, what? That's crazy. And the fact that, he was able to live such a holy life and recognized by, now to be recognized in the church as a canonized saint, like it's really put it in perspective that it can happen to any of us, right? And only if we live a life that is truly centered for Christ, and after searching him up, there was a few more other like servants of God's who are like before they like they're up for they're up for to become a venerable, and then there's a couple who are venerable and one that's about to be a saint as well, and they're just so cool, and they're like all born within the 80s and the 90s, and just like there's like a good amount of them that are not that far from us, and it just blows my mind. And so it's such a beautiful thing to kind of like hear that it's inspiring a lot of us, I think, young people to really change our lifestyles, or maybe like, at least become more aware of what we're doing. So that's awesome. We're going to take a break right here and come back with more with Ricky. So yeah, we'll be right back. Really quick, Adrian here. Just wanted to make sure that I clarified something. During the time of the recording, I was mistaken about Carlo Acutis. He's not a canonized saint yet. He was not being canonized. He was beatified, aka meaning he was becoming a blessed, becoming from a venerable to a blessed, not a saint just yet. Just yet. Just one more miracle, confirmed miracle, and he will be a saint. But not yet. So just wanted to clarify so I don't confuse people. All right, back to the show. All right, we're back with Ricky Cruz. If you don't follow him already, make sure you follow him at arc.crtv on Instagram. And you can also follow the Creation Project at the.creation project on Instagram as well. And those are things that he's been doing. And we should talk about that as well. But we'll pick up from where we were just left off. We talked about modern day saints and the things that you were doing that has gained a lot of attention from, I feel like, a lot of people, is your modern day. You kind of talked about it, and that's kind of where we left off on, is those modern day saint cards, like reimagined. So I know you said that that's where it kind of came from, prayer and like the thought of it, but like, what made you start with, was it Padre Pio you started with?
Yeah, I started with Padre Pio, but before that I was doing like posters, and the first one that I did was Saint Maximilian Kolbe for his feast day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Padre Pio was the first one for the prayer cards.
So do you mind if I like post some of those on like when I put it on YouTube, like kind of like pictures of the things that we're referring to?
Yeah, totally.
So you started with that, and then you did JB2, right? Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
So it was just this feast days and things like that, or what? Just people you loved and then continued from there.
Yeah, so like the posters was mostly the feast day for Saint Maximilian Kolbe, and then obviously Saint JP2 and Mother Teresa were both just two saints that I loved.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's just create a poster for them. Just very basic.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess like delving into the saint prayer cards, obviously I kind of explained like one of the inspirations behind it.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I called it like a prayer card was because I really wanted to reimagine the prayer card.
Yeah.
You go to church, or you have people hand these saint prayer cards to you, and they're like made of cheap material, or like they're falling apart. It's hard to read. The words are everywhere, and it's just like, it doesn't look, a lot of them don't look like visually appealing,
Right.
And what I really wanted to do with these prayer cards was not only make them visually appealing, but also allow people to engage in the prayer more.
Nice.
Like really, like one of my biggest design features that I like to do is like settle, I guess you could say like Easter eggs, right? Where it's kind of like hints towards something. And I really wanted these prayer cards to be almost like a journey of kind of seeing like, okay, what does this mean in the prayer card in terms of like the saint, right?
I'm looking at them over here on the side as you talk about.
Yeah. I want it, like, because for me, prayer was always like, when I was growing up, prayer was like memorized, right? It was never never really meant anything. And so I wanted the prayer cards to be engaging. I wanted the prayer cards to be reimagined and look better, right? Because I wanted people to kind of have that same experience that I had with the saints of like realizing holiness isn't as far as it seems.
Right.
And these are people that you could look up to and pray to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you gonna make one for Saint Carlo Acutis?
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. They're all so like they're just so well like created and so intricate, and I love it. It's just so beautiful. So are you planning on releasing these like for sale eventually then?
Yeah. So I've had so many people ask about this, if I'm going to print these. And my response is, yes, I do want to print it. But my number one thing is finding a quality printer. Because I just don't want to print them just to print them.
Yeah.
And like the whole thing of like reimagine just doesn't mean the design, it also means the quality of the thing. You know, I just don't want it to be a laminated piece of paper. So like I'm working on finding a printer. I'm talking with a few printers to try to see, you know, like how can we make this different and like worthwhile, you know. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I love that because, you know, what has been, it seems the trend with a lot of Catholic companies is just ethically sourced stuff, or just in general, like things that are well intentioned and made. And you recently had Haida from Reliquary Supply at the Creation Project, and love her. She's amazing. She was on our podcast with Jarrell a month ago or so. And we just talked about starting your brand, and it was just like such an amazing like 2-hour episode that we had. And it was, she just emanates like amazing vibes and in general, but the creativeness between her and her husband is just like insane, and it's so great. And their Advent prayer cards that are like thick, like 4x6 cards that are coming out, and they're so cool. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
So I just can't wait to see your stuff come out. I'm ordering those prayer cards. Like I already ordered those prayer cards from the Advent prayer card list from Reliquary Supply. And if you guys know of any other cool things like this, please feel free to share it, and we'll like promote it on our account and stuff like that, because this is the kind of things that like will help us bring back to church. Like, you know, when things are well intentioned and beautifully made, just like a cathedral, you know, like like it's something that you go in and you're like, wow, versus like a church that is like, you know, not as kind of like plain and simple, and like there's some beauty in that, but it's not gonna make you go, wow, like this is amazing. And so like your prayer cards, though they may seem simple, they're so intricately and beautifully made, and that's something that, you know, as young people we need, you know, we need to see that we belong and not just be straight out of an autumn magazine.
Exactly. I want to talk about that one point though.
Go for it.
And just a quick shout out to Jarrell and Haida, like those two. And also Ben, Haida's husband. All three of them have been such a big point of inspiration, not just creatively, but also faith-wise in being a Catholic creative. We had Haida and Ben come on the Creation Project, I think 2 weeks ago. And like she was just explaining about like the intricacy of each and every single product that they've made over at Reliquary Supply. And like what she was saying really inspired me. And I guess this is kind of a segue into like the Creation Project and all of that stuff. But, you know, one of the reasons why I became a creative was to really like help out the church 100%. And because the Catholic Church used to be at the forefront of art, right? Like a lot of the world's most have pieces of art were created by Catholic creatives or Catholic artists, right? And then now we're like way behind on every single thing, you know. And what makes me sad is that, you know, it's not it's not so much like the overall Catholic Church, right? It's like
Right.
it all starts at your local parish or your local diocese, and a lot of the parishes you go and you kind of see like the bulletins or the prayer cards or the song books or
Yeah.
just the overall environment of the church is so bland and so lifeless sometimes. And you go into the church and it's like the same thing too, you know. And I was like, man, like what happened to the days when Catholics created these grand cathedrals, painted these crazy murals? And I'm not saying like those things are outdated. They're not outdated at all. You know, like we know so many people and painters and illustrators who can make that stuff. But now it's like the 21st century. We have access to the internet. We have access to like all these electronics, all these applications that make beautiful things, right? And I'm like, why isn't the church focusing on feeding into this, right? Like feeding into videographers, photographers, and graphic designers, podcasters, because this is like the next wave of artistic expression, right? And you know, our faith is honestly so beautiful. You know, like there's so much symbolism, there's so much like meaning behind it, right? It's not just a wafer, right? Like it's the Eucharist, and like if we can capture that by our art, right? Like how powerful is that? How powerful of a tool is that for evangelization and bringing back people into the church? So yeah, that's like a small tangent, but
I love that though. No, it's so true. It's so true, and I'm never bold enough to say it, but yeah, it's. Well, I am. There's days where I am, but like you know, I'm always a little timid at times just to say that. Yeah, we are bland, yo. Like we used to have such great things, and the fact that that's why it encourages me to want to be more creative when I see creatives like you and like Ben, like and Haida, to kind of want to like, oh yeah, this is amazing, and not to compete but to add, because like there was no competition in the art, you know, like it was just like, let's see what greatness we can create for the Lord, and that's what it's about. And so if you're a creative, keep creating like however you create, like it's amazing, and it's doing works around there. And so I guess, like you said, it's a good segue into the creation project. When did you just start this? During like the summer?
Yeah, we started beginning of quarantine, like in April.
Oh yeah. So there's a team of you guys.
Yeah, there's 4 of us right now, and we're just like a group of young Catholic creatives.
Your friends like locally or?
Yeah, 2 of them are local. One of them is across the country. Sorry, a team of 5. 2 of them are across the country. 2 of them are here, and then I'm here too.
Shout those out. Shout them out. Who are they?
Yeah, so we have Jazz and Jen here in California, and we have Brian and Brooke in Philly and in Connecticut.
Oh, that's right.
And they're 4 of some of the most talented people that I know. And they're not just like graphic designers, you know, they have different artistic mediums too, you know, and I learn a lot from them, and it's great because like we knew of each other, but I think just by being a leadership team and, you know, getting to know each other, we've really become friends, which has been such a blessing. So
that's awesome. So did you guys just like, who DM'd who, did what? My phone padding just fell. It's okay.
No, you're good. Yeah, honestly, like I DM'd Jazz, and I also DM'd my friend Bradley Santos, who's another Catholic creative. He's up in Seattle, and he's been like a big mentor for me. And so like I pitched the idea to him, and I'm like, hey, can you guide me through this? Like, is this like a good message? And like he really coached me through that. And then I DM'd Jazz, and I was like, hey, I have this idea. Do you want to be a part of the leadership team? And then I was like, hey, can you reach out to some more people? So she reached out to all these other people, and I reached out to some people, and then we just ended up with this awesome and talented team, who are so great, and honestly, like super thankful, because like they're my friends too. and it's been such a blessing to be able to just go through this journey with them.
That's so awesome, man. That's so cool. I was wondering when I saw the team you guys released, like who was part of it. I was like, how do they all know each other? I was like,
yeah. So fun fact, like I've never met Brooke in person. Oh, really? And I met Brian like a year ago when we went to Seek, which is like a Focus conference. Yeah. So yeah, we we all just clicked and we've all just met virtually. That's awesome. So it's been awesome that like we've been able to get along.
So for those who don't know what the Creation Project's mission is, why don't you give it a little bit about that?
Yeah. So like what I was saying a while ago and talking about how like Catholic artists used to be at the forefront of like art innovation and all that stuff. Yeah. And now like we're kind of lagging. And and I have like a deep passion for young adult ministry or like youth ministry. And I've met so many talented people my age and younger who are artists and who are creative and who are insanely talented. Yeah. And who love their faith but don't necessarily have like the platform or the opportunity to share it. And I was like, I want to create a community of people who just want to share their art and who want to learn from other people, who want to meet other people. And obviously like we have the whole Catholic creatives community, like the actual Catholic creatives. But so like honestly like top grade people over there, like really awesome people over there. But some people may feel a little bit uncomfortable or intimidated by that. And I really wanted to be like, hey, like this is for young adults, this is for the youth. And I want to walk with you through your journey of being a creative in the church. So basically what the Creation Project is the next generation of Catholic artists. So like young adults and youth. And we have people come in, like professional creatives come in. We've had Haida and Ben come in. We've had Edmund Mitchell come in, David Calavita from Life Teen come in, and a few other people too. And they're able to share their faith and able to share their advice. And our mission is to really inspire collaboration, inspire like artistic ability in people. And just really hone in on the fact like not only are you creative and not only are you talented, but like the church wants you and like you're needed. And not only that too, like we've met so many people who have just joined because they're interested in becoming like a creative or like an artist. And we've had some tell us like, hey, I want to get into graphic design after your session or after like they saw something. And we're like, yes, like this is what we want to do. Like not only do we want to teach the current artists in the church, but we also want to harvest like new artists to come in. Like we just want to keep going, because there's no such thing as like too many artists, like I think the church, if anything, needs more artists. And so like that's our whole mission, to teach, to mentor, to be there, create community, and collaborate, and honestly just to like love one another and just walk with each other in this like faith and artistic journey. So it's been a blessing through that.
That's so cool. I love that. I know I kind of started following at the beginning. I forget. I think I was already following you and then you had promoted. I was like, oh, cool. What is this? And just kind of seeing it blossom into what it is. And I immediately, I'm like, I had Edmund on our show earlier this year during our COVID collab where I had him come in and I saw that he was like, what is this? Who's in charge of this? I want to be part of it. And I was like, that's so cool. Like just seeing that like trickle down into something that's so great. And I think it's so, I mean, the few sessions I've been able to be part of because, scheduling and stuff have been amazing. And so I love the things that you guys are doing and the way you guys are going about it. And I think it's going to continue to inspire. And I hope that it continues to grow into hopefully something you guys will have to expand your team on, because it's just too much, you know, like, and that'll be a beautiful blessing to have, a beautiful blessing to have, even though it's a beautiful challenge rather, to come across. And we need that. And the thing with with what you said about, you know, the church needs more, and it always feels like, because I think Haida had mentioned that in our podcast, like before, like the doubts that happens, like, oh, but people already are creating these things, I don't need to do it too. It's like, no, we need you. Like Haida's like, no, we need your insight. We need to know what you're feeling or what you're doing, because what you bring to the table is going to be a lot different than what I bring, or what Adrian brings, or what, you know, Jarrell brings to the table. And what you need is what you have to offer is needed. You know? Yeah. And so, that's an amazing thing. So thanks for starting that, and having, you know, praise God that it's gone the way it has gone, you know. So
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Last thing I want to ask you, a couple things actually. What is your favorite project that you've ever done?
What's my favorite project?
Ever worked on, rather. It could be current.
Honestly, I have to say the Saint prayer cards is my favorite. Yeah. Just because it's like something new. And it's like really challenged me creatively. So it's been great to kind of like work through that. So it's been it's probably one of my favorite projects to date.
That's awesome. I have to say that I think I forgot to mention earlier that for like 6 months I had your Divine Mercy wallpaper that you made as my wallpaper, and it was just really great. So really cool that, like, I just realized, like, oh yeah, that's who he was, the one who created that, right? And so it's just like the things that you're creating is awesome, and I'm glad that you're sharing your gifts, man. So thank you for doing that. The last thing I wanted to ask you is, for those who are young designers, and the people that, you know, who could fit under the realm of, you know, the people you're trying to reach out to through the creation project, what is your message out to those young Catholics? I know you mentioned earlier like resting and stuff, but what else do you have to add on to that?
I have a few, but you know, I think the number one thing is that your talents are needed. Your gifts are needed in the church. You know, it honestly, like, really, for me personally, like, it sucks to hear somebody who's like really talented say like, oh, like the church doesn't need that, or the church doesn't want me, or like, oh, I'm not creative. You know, I've always stood by the fact that each and every single person is creative. Like, each and every single person is creative. And because, like, a lot of times we tend to associate creativity with something that's tangible, right? Like, oh, a photographer, a videographer, a graphic designer, they're talented. But why can't, like, a writer or like a speaker be equally as talented too? You know, or somebody who has like these creative thoughts but doesn't necessarily know how to put it on paper. And like, that's honestly the number one piece of advice, is that your gifts and talents are needed, and you being a young person in the church shouldn't be a reason why you shouldn't be able to be a help in the church. You know, or be an artistic voice in the church. I know that it's hard. Not every single person has the opportunity to, you know, help at their youth ministry and like graphics, or help at their church and do photography, you know. Obviously, like, they're, you know, God bless those churches who are giving young people that opportunity, right? But, you know, I encourage people to, or young creatives, to find a community who really harvest your gifts. You know, whether it be the Creation Project or some other community out there, right? Like, find people who inspire you and who build you up, not only in creativity but also in faith. So that's number one. Number two, pray for our church leaders, and pray for your local parish. I think as artists, like, we have these gifts and abilities for a reason, right? And that's to evangelize. That's to really allow our faith to be expressed in a different way. And like what I was saying in the past advice, how, you know, not everybody has that opportunity. And that's where like we need to pray and like pray that our church leaders become open to seeing the talents and gifts that young people have in the church, or like the leadership in churches, right? Because like our churches are hurting, you know, there's no doubt about that. Young people are leaving, young families are no longer there. You know, it's honestly like the pews are empty now. And like they need us, they need the young church, they need the young artists. So continually pray for our church leaders and administrators to open up their hearts and open up their minds to really what the church needs. And number 3 also is to rest, right? Like what I was talking about a while ago. I think that's so important. You know, creativity shouldn't come from a place of dryness. Creativity should come from an overflow. And I mean, that's the same thing for faith, right? Like your faith shouldn't be coming from a place of dryness. It's supposed to be coming from a place of overflow. And, you know, like if you're creating from a place of emptiness, people will call you out on it. You know, like people have called me out like, dude, like this isn't really what we expect of you. And, you know, like at the moment I'll be like, what the heck? Like, why are you telling that to me? But then, you know, like after reflecting on it, I'll be like, you know, that's true. You know, that wasn't my best. And, you know, I just was operating from a place of emptiness or a place of unmotivation. And the number one way to get rid of that is to rest. And what I mean by resting, it doesn't necessarily mean by like dropping everything and like forgetting about everything. You know, what I mean by resting is to be like active in finding inspiration, and being active in being open to what God wants to speak in your art through you. Whether that be, I mean, church is open now, you know, in some places, right? Like go to your local parish and pray in front of the Eucharist, or go to mass, watch mass, wherever you're at. Open up the Bible, you know, do whatever it means to like rest in Christ, right? In a spiritual sense, in an artistic sense, you know, if you're like overwhelmed by all these projects that you have, like if you're, for example, I'm a photographer too. So sometimes, you know, if I'm not doing a project and I want to practice, or like I want to find inspiration, I'll just take my camera and like text my friends and say, hey, do you just want to get some random photos? And like, let's just have some fun. Let's go somewhere and let's just take awesome photos. And just through that, like I'm so reinvigorated because there's no pressure of like a deadline or like quality or something like that, right? It's more so like, oh, I want to remind myself that I enjoy this. Or, you know, the prayer cards came from that, from an inspiration of just like me being, oh, like how do I create something like this? And then the prayer cards came out of that rest. You know, so rest is so important, but be active in your rest. Don't drop everything. Continually find inspiration. So I'd say being a Catholic creative, those are like the top 3 pieces of advice.
So recap. 1 is
1, you are needed. 2, pray for our church leaders, and 3, remember to rest.
All great advice. It's something that I mean, I even tell my teens in just practical sense of like prayer, like, you know, you're needed, you're worthy, right? 2, like just in general. 3, like pray for the church, pray for your pastor, pray for, you know, get involved in your parish. And then, you know, 3, like rest. Like you're overwhelmed from schoolwork, to just rest. Like do something that's going to bring you life, you know. And that's, you know, it's practical in your daily life, but it's also practical as a creative, and it's amazing. And so great advice. Hope you guys get helps you in some way, shape, or form. And last thing here is I like to ask, you know, our guests to shout out a few accounts that, you know, you want our listeners to follow, that you feel like they would get something out of. So what are some of these people that you want to shout out?
Yeah. Obviously, you've shouted out my Instagram and the Creation Project Instagram. So follow those if you haven't yet. But I want to give a special shout out to my leadership team at the Creation Project. Some of the most talented and faith-filled people that I know. So there's Jazz. You can follow her at Made for Greater, which is a company that she owns. Super awesome company. Jen, she runs The Sun and Stars. Another very talented illustrator. Check her out. Brooke, she runs Mod Threads, and she's been such a really awesome person to see grow graphically. She's really got into graphic design lately, and I know she's reached out to me a few times to help her out with some stuff, and it's been really awesome just to see her journey. And she's great. So check her out. And then also Brian, such a good photographer, awesome guy. So go follow him too. And then just a few other people who I've mentioned in this podcast that I encourage everybody to follow is Reliquary Supply. Haida and Ben are the two people who run that. They're reimagined Catholic. How would you say it? Like Catholic objects?
Yeah, like
objects. Something
they say something. There's a particular word I can't think of.
Yeah, same. I'm trying to think about it, but they're honestly doing such great things for the church. Jarrell at The Living Person, follow him, The Living Person. Honestly, a really inspirational account out there. And also Edmund Mitchell, one of the funniest guys that I know, and also one of the most creative and hardworking people as well. So follow all of them for inspiration. And yeah. That's
awesome. Yeah, it's called, I think it says on their account, Reimagined Catholic Classics.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some word. That's a word. Yeah. Awesome. Those are all great. You all have, if you haven't heard the episode with Haida that we had with Jarrell, our co-host, go ahead and listen to that. I'll link all the things he just shouted out in the description below, and a couple of the episodes that Haida was in, and some of the Q&As that Jarrell and I have done, and then the episode with Edmund. I'll link all of those in the description below, and follow them on their Instagram accounts because they're amazing. Make sure you also follow Ricky at his. Again, it's at arc.crtv, and then the Creation Project, which is at the.creation project. Again, everything's linked in the description. I just hit my table. Follow Living Ardently at Living Ardently. Follow me at It's Only Adrian personally, my personal account. See my the goofy things that I like to post and basketball stuff that I like to talk about. And make sure if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a rating and a review. It really helps us get the podcast out to more people. And if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell, whatever they tell you to do that thing. But for our account. And yeah, if you're not listening on any of those, just make sure you're following so you know when we're uploading our new episodes. And I think I'm going to be getting back into a regular Monday because I'm kind of settled into the new apartment and everything like that. So thanks for bearing with me and the time that I was trying to take for rest while still creating content for you all. But yeah, thanks all for listening. Make sure you send Ricky a thank you for all the great things he's done and created for all of us and shared with us. So, and make sure you see his new potential and his prayer cards when they come out. So go follow him there. I think that's all I got. Do you have anything last things you want to say?
Nope. Thanks for having me. This is really awesome. So
hey man, of course. Thanks again for saying yes. And this is like literally less than 24 hour like turnaround. So super great. Thanks for being willing.
Of course.
And yeah, I think that's all we got then. So God bless you all. Thanks for listening. And until next time,
keep living ardently.
Peace.